Just to this point of overall spending, again, let's just use the numbers, all right? For those of you that think, oh, of course, it's Sky News, you're just going to whip yourselves into a frenzy. May I repeat, the numbers from the budget in March, the amount of income they were getting as a government was $547 billion. It's now up to 607. So they have more money than they had in March. So they should have absolutely shrunk that deficit, but instead they're adding to extra spending with tens of billions of dollars, and the spending goes from 628 to 651. That's the reality of the numbers here, Chris.
They've chosen to spend more instead of show restraint. They've chosen to spend money, giving more people more money to do nothing. Extended parental leave sounds lovely, but it's not productive as they pretend it is. And the problem here is that there's no path towards a budget surplus. You don't see any hope of a budget surplus anywhere in the forward outlook, and in fact you don't see any hope where you used to of getting the spending back down from the pandemic levels back down to 25% of the economy, which is where Labor and the Liberals have always talked about having it, and it was heading there again. We've got 27% of GDP as far as the eye can see. There is no attempt in this budget to restrain spending in the medium term. That only means that inflation's going to get worse because we've got gas and electricity prices fueling it as well. And as you say, their forecasts on inflation are heroic, I would say delusional.
Yeah, and look, Stephen Conroy and I'll have that conversation again a little bit later, but good for him to admit, and he's always
exactly.
Yeah, it's the same people who stuffed up the last budgets, the one before that. It's just a different person who's giving the orders around the table right now. But Andrew, what are we being softened up for? Because the first budget is the biggest statement of claim you can put. This is the one when you think you're going to govern for the next 10 years. So, a bit of pain now and everyone will be back in 2 years' time. Now, I don't know here, but my sense is if they're trying to sell a very big message that spending is through the roof and we can't possibly cut anything, then they're going to have to look at the revenue side of things here. I reckon in the next 12 months we're going to have conversations about special one-off taxes, super profit tax on this, revisiting of things like the good old-fashioned mining tax, because otherwise this government had $116 billion in extra revenue that came out of the resources sector. They could have literally filled the entire budget deficit and been in a surplus tonight, but because of all the spending and the blowouts and the rest of it, they didn't do that. So at some point, something has to plug the hole, and I reckon it's going to be extra revenue, and we know that much of the lefty press and a lefty Senate will cheer it on.
Well, you can see that we were being softened up before the budget with all those leaks and hints and winks and nods that they were going to cancel the stage 3 tax cuts. Now, had they done it, and they would come in 2 years' time, that would have helped those 2 years, you saw in the forward estimate graphic that you just put up, where Labor actually increases the projected budget deficit. So what Liberals had predicted, Labor will actually make worse, and that's why it wanted that extra money. Now, of course, there would be a broken promise, and the reasons it was giving, like, we can't put more money in the economy, inflation, all that, that was rubbish, because we don't know where we'll be in 2 years' time. Now, if you have a look at this graphic, you'll actually see the first year, this financial year, they reckon the deficit will actually be much better than predicted, and they're taking credit for it. Look at this graphic very carefully, because what it actually shows is that the extra money that they've got in their pocket this financial year, that's not because of them. That's mostly because of the fact that the former Morrison government made certain assumptions, but also put in policies that turned out to have worked. Correct. And therefore there's more money now in the kick. But when Labor is fully in charge, in 3 years from now, in 4 years from now, you will see the deficit then increasing because it cannot cut spending. And I don't know, Chris will have maybe a longer memory than me, but I cannot remember a single treasurer in decades that didn't have at least a long-term plan and a promise, effective promise, to bring the budget deficits to surplus, to stop spending so much. I mean, I know they never made it. You had Wayne Swan, the former Labor treasurer, saying, the deficits are announced, the surpluses are announced tonight. It didn't do one. This government did not once mention a surplus or when possibly it would be achieved.